What's going on, YouTube? Listen up, young elder gang. This is Ted Strokes at you with another banger. Please make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video. Fam, I hope this video get at least 100,000 likes. In this video, you will find history definitions, scripture information, and best of all, what we Americans have been deprived of from the beginning. The truth, keep in mind, this content used in this video is intended for entertainment, educational, and informational purposes only. We will give you the total truth as we best understand it today. Be sure to hit that like button. Young elder gang, hit that subscribe button. If you're new to the channel, hit that bell, and don't forget to check back with us every day for new content. In the dark corners of Washington, D.C., beneath marble and Gothic archways, shadows gather. The Smithsonian Institution stands like a mausoleum of secrets, the world's largest museum, education, and research complex. Its grand facades and endless corridors hint at mysteries that gnaw at the edges of history. In the cool darkness, stories threaten the world we think we know. Secret societies and hidden vaults work behind locked doors. They guard artifacts that could rewrite history and shatter truths. But truth claws its way back into the light. The time has come to unveil what's been hidden. The stolen building known as the Smithsonian Institution building was originally a castle built by Moors before 1492. This is the first cover-up. In the 1800s, the United States Corporation and Inc. captured the castle. They've been doing this a lot. They turned most castles into prisons after labeling them abandoned after the wars. Once USA took control of the castle, they turned it into a mall. The Smithsonian Institution has historical holdings of over 157 million items, 21 museums, 21 libraries, 14 education and research centers, a zoo, and historical and architectural landmarks, mostly located in Washington, D.C. Additional facilities are located in Maryland, New York, and Virginia. More than 200 institutions and museums in 47 states, Puerto Rico, and Panama are Smithsonian affiliates. The castle already had huge underground layouts. In fact, the Tartarians had already dug out advanced tunnel systems under the land they call Washington, D.C. today. They begin remodeling the castle, and by 1855 it was completed. James Renwick Jr., the Dirty Moor, is given the credit as the architect and designer, but he only remodels the castle to hide more artifacts for the colonizers. The Smithsonian Institution did not arise by accident. They say in many ways, the origin of the Smithsonian Institution can be traced to a group of Washington citizens who, being impressed with the importance of forming an association for promoting useful knowledge, met on June 28, 1816, to establish the Columbian Institute for the Promotion of Arts and Sciences. Officers were elected in October 1816, and the organization was granted a charter by Congress on April 20, 1818. This charter expired in 1838. Benjamin Latrobe, who was architect for the U.S. Capitol after the War of 1812, and William Thornton, the architect who designed the Octagon House in Tudor Place, served as officers. Other prominent members, who numbered from 30 to 70 during the Institute's existence, included John Quincy Adams, Andrew Jackson, Henry Clay, Judge William Cranch, and James Hoban. Honorary members included James Madison, James Monroe, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, and the Marquis de Lafayette. Operating expenses were covered from the $5 yearly dues collected from each member, who were all Freemasons. The Smithsonian Institution logo is the Masonic blazing star. The Smithsonian Institution Act is the act of Congress, established by Congress on August 10, 1846. Which established the Smithsonian Institution to fulfill the bequest and will of James Smithson, an Englishman, whose fortune was left to the United States in effort to overthrow the Moors at the North Gate. Now, why would Congress, which really means to go against progress, pass the Smithsonian Institution Act and then put it into a trust? Simple, it's because those artifacts are assets that belong to the Moors of America. A lot of this might go over your head, but a trustee's main role is to hold, manage, and distribute trust assets according to the trust document and for the benefit of the beneficiaries, which are the Moors of America. The trustee must make prudent investment decisions, keep detailed financial records, and handle tax matters for the trust. Trustees can make distributions to beneficiaries, manage properties, pay trust expenses, and hire professionals like accountants and financial advisors to help with trust administration. A trust instrument is a legal document, also known as a trust agreement, that creates a trust by establishing a fiduciary relationship where the grantor transfers assets to a trustee to manage for the benefit of beneficiaries. This legally binding document specifies the trust's purpose, the assets it holds, and the duties and powers of the trustee, ensuring assets are managed and distributed according to the grantor's instructions, often to avoid probate court and manage complex estates. The USA government also did this so they couldn't be sued later in international court. The Smithsonian has a collection of 155 million artifacts, and their value varies wildly, from the Hope Diamond, valued at £350 million, to the 1903 Wright Flyer and Archie Bunker's chair, which are considered priceless. The Smithsonian has control over Moorish assets worth well over $1 trillion. The Smithsonian Institution Act created a unique public-private partnership, a federal trust instrumentality dedicated to the increase and diffusion of knowledge among men. Key words here are federal trust instrumentality and diffusion. Diffusion, a concept related to the natural spread of particles or information, can be used negatively through disinformation campaigns, where false information is spread to deceive and control the public, and in cognitive diffusion techniques, where diffusion is used to distance oneself from negative thoughts to mitigate their mental impact. In a technical context like image generation, diffusion models can produce undesirable or flawed images if negative prompts are poorly constructed, or the underlying diffusion process is exploited to create biased or unwanted content. The Smithsonian Institution Act also established the Board of Regents as the governing body and outlined the initial functions of the institution, including a library, museum, and research facilities. The truth has been labeled a hoax to exploit psychological biases, consolidate political power, or serve financial interests. By casting facts as fake and hiding records and artifacts, manipulators can control public perception, create an us versus them dynamic, and discourage critical thinking. Repeating a falsehood multiple times can cause people to believe it, even if they know the information is false or if the source is known to be unreliable. They have pushed relentless campaigns of repetition across different channels to convince people that an uncomfortable truth is actually a lie. When people are presented with a truth that conflicts with their deeply held beliefs, values, or actions, they experience psychological discomfort. To resolve this, they may reject the new information outright and double down on their existing views. Labeling the truth as a hoax provides a convenient justification to avoid having to change their minds or behaviors. People tend to seek out and interpret information that aligns with their pre-existing beliefs, a phenomenon called confirmation bias. When this happens inside a social media echo chamber, where people are only exposed to like-minded views, it reinforces the belief that anything contradictory is a lie. A manufactured hoax label can thrive in such environments because it is never challenged. A government or political faction could label a truthful, well-documented narrative as a hoax to delegitimize its political opponents or an outgroup. This strategy demonizes the opposition as liars or conspirators, framing them as a threat to national stability or public safety. This diverts attention from the original truth and can be used to justify the erosion of democratic institutions or human rights. A political actor could deliberately spread numerous conflicting stories and theories, a strategy sometimes called the fire hose of falsehood or flooding the zone. When people are overwhelmed with misinformation and outright lies, they can become confused, exhausted, and apathetic. A shared, verifiable truth becomes just one of many competing narratives, losing its importance in the face of manufactured chaos. Leaders can sow distrust in any institution that might challenge their power, such as the media, scientists, or the judiciary. If a scientific consensus or a journalistic investigation uncovers an inconvenient truth, branding it a hoax can be used to discredit the entire institution, making it easier to control the flow of information. A company might label a scientific finding as a hoax if it threatens their business model. For example, an energy company could discredit research about climate change, or a tobacco company might question studies showing the health risks of smoking. By funding campaigns that spread misinformation and label the truth a hoax, they protect their profits. A powerful and corrupt entity may label revelations of wrongdoing as a hoax to protect themselves from accountability. They might fabricate counter-narratives and bribe witnesses to make the truth seem less credible. The goal is to make the true story so complicated and full of contradictions that the public can no longer discern what is real. A group of grifters or marketers could label a true, widely available solution to a problem as a hoax, and then sell their own secret or alternative solution. For example, labeling proven medical treatments as part of a conspiracy could allow them to market and profit from unproven and potentially dangerous remedies. The Smithsonian Institution was named after the will of James Smithson, the British scientist, 1765–1829, who left most of his wealth to his nephew Henry James Hungerford. His aim, the increase and diffusion of knowledge. But knowledge in the hands of a colonizing empire becomes a weapon. Keep in mind, fuse mean to put two things together. But anyway, when Hungerford died childless in 1835, the estate passed to the United States of America to found at Washington, under the name of the Smithsonian Institution, an establishment for the increase and diffusion of knowledge among men, in accordance with Smithson's will. Congress officially accepted the legacy bequeathed to the nation and pledged the faith of the United States to the charitable trust on July 1, 1836. The American diplomat Richard Rush was dispatched to England by President Andrew Jackson to collect the bequest. Rush returned in August 1838 with 105 sacks containing 104,960 gold sovereigns. This is approximately $500,000 at the time, which is equivalent to $15 million in 2024 or equivalent to £12 million in 2023. However, when considering the GDP at the time, it may be more comparable to $220 million in the year 2007. Once the money was in their greasy hands, 8 years of congressional haggling ensued over how to interpret Smithson's rather vague mandate for the increase and diffusion of knowledge. They interpreted as if he wanted to help them in their quest for colonization. The money was invested by the U.S. Treasury in bonds issued by the state of Arkansas, which soon defaulted. After heated debate, Massachusetts Representative and former President John Quincy Adams persuaded Congress to restore the lost funds with interest, and despite designs on the money for other purposes, convinced his colleagues to preserve it for an institution of science and learning. Finally, on August 10, 1846, President James K. Polk signed the legislation that established the Smithsonian Institution as a trust instrumentality of the United States to be administered by a board of regents and a secretary of the Smithsonian. In the context of a kingdom, a subject is a person who lives under the rule of a king or queen and owes allegiance and obedience to that monarch, which in this case is the Crown of England, or should I say, used to be. The Christians had colonized the Moors around the world, but American Moors were a special colonizing mission. Their whole Roman Empire depended on the American Moors being rocked to sleep and never remembering their history. Watch now. A smith or smithy is shorthand for blacksmith, an artisan who hammers tools and other items out of hot iron or steel. The name Sonia means wisdom. It is a popular female name of Slavic, Slave, and Russian origin, acting as a diminutive, a shortened, affectionate form of the Greek name Sophia, which also means wisdom. The name's roots trace back to the ancient Greek word Sophia. Smithsonian translates into crafty and wise, those who work the devil's magic of deception. The serpent in the biblical narrative of Eden is characterized by its craftiness, using deceptive words to manipulate Eve and lead her to disobey God, which in this case is Enlil. Like we said, why would the USA pass a law or act of Congress for the Smithsonian? It's simple. The USA Corporation is a business based on colonization under the doctrine of discovery co-signed by the popes of Rome, and artifacts showing their subjects as the superior kind of put a damp on their business, especially when their business is based on keeping the Moors, whose estate they trustee while they slumber and sleep. It's a sad case of colonization. As America expanded, subjugating indigenous nations, the Smithsonian became entwined with colonial ambitions. Wealthy men and politicians shaped its mission, curating what the public could see and what was hidden. Artifacts that didn't fit the story were quietly removed, and uncomfortable truths were buried within its marble halls. Anyone coming out talking about unwanted truths were labeled as nut jobs and the gospel they preached as a hoax. You see, the truth is, the colonizers came with the perspective that life started in Africa. They had never excavated or did archaeology studies of the land past the Appalachian Mountains before the 1700s. When the 13 colonies were set up, they couldn't go past the Appalachian Mountains. So, they really had no clue until after 1803 of how far the people on Turtle Island, which is the real spiritual name of this land called America, go back. The USA Corporation at the time were too busy wiping out the Moors to do excavation or archaeology work and studies. They didn't start excavation heavy west until after the Louisiana Purchase. The Louisiana Purchase was the inquisition of the territory of Louisiana by the United States from the French First Republic in 1803. This consisted of most of the land in the Mississippi River's drainage basin west of the river. In return for $15 million, or approximately $18 per square mile, the United States nominally acquired a total of 828,000 squami acres, now in the central United States. They didn't make it to the Grand Canyon until later around the early 1900s. The Grand Canyon is off limits and patrolled by the dark government because they can't let no one take pictures of the Moors being in America for over 50,000 years. This is a high-level military operation for the colonizers. It's impossible to know the exact number of mounds in America, as many have been destroyed by agriculture, looting, and erosion. However, historical records and archaeological evidence suggest that tens of thousands existed, with the potential for over 15,000 mounds in Ohio alone and thousands more across the eastern U.S. by pre-colonial times. They have collected Moorish human brains at the Smithsonian. Excavation and mapping of Native American mounds by archaeologists began in the 18th century, with early systematic work by Thomas Jefferson in the 1780s, who discover shocking evidence that reveals the Moors ruled America for a long time. This marked the beginning of the formal study of these significant historical structures. After the Louisiana Purchase, they began digging like their life depended on it, and it did. And the more they dig, the more they found, the more they had to cover up. The artifacts they were finding contradicted their out-of-Africa theories and destroyed their Bible and Christian belief system, which they were using to enslave the natives with. They had to do something fast. These secrets had to be protected at all cost. The Moors, who they had rocked asleep and stolen their estate, must never ever see these artifacts and overstand them. After close to 50 years of digging and covering up. In 1865, after the Civil War, they could now reenact the Black Christian codes on their Moorish subjects. A pioneer in the 19th century, Dickinson conducted extensive excavations in Louisiana and Mississippi, gathering a large collection of artifacts and contributing to the debate about the origins of the mounds. The process of erasing inconvenient history is systematic. When explorers and local farmers stumbled upon relics, giant skeletons, Moorish coins, or sacred objects, they were instructed to report them to the Smithsonian. Eager archaeologists would arrive, armed with authority and secrecy. Artifacts were cataloged, photographed, and then vanished into storage, never to be seen again. The most damning evidence pointed to ancient, dark-skinned peoples, Nubian Moors, African kings, and thriving indigenous cultures predating Columbus by centuries. Pottery, tools, and even mummified remains bore features unmistakably Moorish. Petroglyphs told stories of migrations across oceans, kingdoms that flourished long before dark-skinned European contact. Instead of celebrating these discoveries, the response was denial. Official reports described the finds as anomalies or misunderstandings. Sometimes the evidence was simply destroyed, burned, buried, or dumped in rivers. Whistleblowers found themselves discredited, labeled as fringe theorists or outright liars. The machinery of suppression was absolute. In this way, a tapestry of voices and visions was reduced to silence. The story of America became a single thread, white, European, and triumphant. Cover-up is not only about destruction. The Smithsonian mastered the art of misdirection. Artifacts that could not be destroyed were quietly sent overseas, often to Africa, sometimes to Europe, claiming they belonged to foreign cultures. Museum labels were altered, provenance was fabricated. Laws made it nearly impossible for indigenous groups to reclaim their heritage. The dispersal of artifacts served a double purpose. It hid the evidence from American audiences and it confused researchers worldwide. When an ancient American statue passed off as African turns up in a Paris museum, its American origin is erased. When sacred Moorish Native American relics are repatriated to the wrong tribe, real restitution becomes impossible. Legal barriers protected the institution. The process was labyrinthine, endless paperwork, shifting policies, and deliberate bureaucracy. Requests for repatriation were stalled, evidence misplaced, and records intentionally lost. The Smithsonian, with its global connections, became a spider at the center of a vast web of deceit. The result? The truth, fragmented and scattered, is almost impossible to reconstruct. The true story of America's past is locked behind 1,000 doors, with no key in sight. Behind the Smithsonian's veil looms another power, the Catholic Church. For centuries, the Church has been implicated in global campaigns to rewrite history, often in tandem with colonial governments. The Doctrine of Discovery, a papal edict, gave Christian kings the right to seize non-Christian lands and subjugate their peoples. The Vatican's shadow stretches across continents. The alliance with the Smithsonian was natural. Both institutions shared a vested interest in maintaining the myth of white European supremacy. Artifacts that threatened this myth were dangerous. Evidence of Moorish and African-descended peoples in ancient America would upend centuries of church teaching and imperial doctrine. Better to bury the relics and keep the faithful in ignorance. Many researchers report secret exchanges, artifacts quietly transferred to Vatican vaults, never to be studied by independent scholars. Priests and bishops advised on sensitive finds, ensuring that anything challenging the Church's narrative was handled with utmost secrecy. The Smithsonian and the Vatican became twin pillars of the same oppressive order. This conspiracy was not just about history. It was about power, control, and the right to define reality itself. The Smithsonian's architecture is itself a testament to secrecy. Gothic towers loom over the National Mall, casting long shadows over the city. Inside, labyrinthine corridors and hidden basements wind beneath the public galleries. Only a handful of trusted staff know the way to the deepest vaults. Here in the gloom are stored the forbidden artifacts, sarcophagi, gold tablets, obsidian tools, and the bones of giants. Security is tight. Cameras, armed guards, and coded locks keep prying eyes away. Occasionally, a flicker of movement is seen behind a frosted glass door, or a hushed conversation echoes down a stone stairwell. The public sees only what they are meant to see. Gleaming displays, carefully curated, present a sanitized version of history. In the sealed archives, however, the true treasures lie untouched, gathering dust. Some say the air is thick with the weight of unspoken stories. Others claim to have felt a presence, watchful, sorrowful, and desperate to be heard. The architecture of secrecy is more than bricks and mortar. It is a fortress for fragile lies, built to withstand the storms of truth. The examples of cover-up are legion, each more fantastic than the last. In the early 20th century, rumors swirled about a massive cave discovered in the Grand Canyon, filled with Egyptian, Moorish, African, and Asian artifacts. The area was quickly closed to the public. Officially, nothing was found. Unofficially, researchers vanished, and the evidence disappeared into Smithsonian vaults. In Kentucky, whispers speak of a tomb with connections to King Tutankhamun, a burial chamber filled with gold and hieroglyphs, echoing ancient Egypt. The site was sealed, the locals silenced, and the Smithsonian denied all knowledge. In Utah, a cave was found with Egyptian kings known as the Sun Kings. They were of Moorish descent. The site was sealed, the locals paid off or silenced, and the Smithsonian denied all knowledge. They found scrolls with Hebrew writing next to the Great Lakes. The scrolls were captured by Smithsonian agents and never seen again. If anyone comes out mentioning it, they are labeled as a nut job. Similar tales surround Burrows Cave in Illinois, where they found the tomb of Alexander the Great, who was a Moor, and hundreds of carved stones and relics were spirited away, their presence scrubbed from official records. Less dramatic, but equally tragic, are the ancient mounds, sacred earthworks built by indigenous peoples. Hundreds were razed, the bones and treasures within shipped off or destroyed. Each mound erased was another step in the campaign to sever Native Americans, who are the Moors, from their own history. The legends persist, kept alive by those who refuse to let the past die. Each story is a wound that refuses to heal, demanding justice. Why go to such lengths? The answer is stark. The erasure of Moorish, Indigenous, and African-descended histories supports a system of white supremacy. By denying the presence of advanced, dark-skinned civilizations in ancient America, the colonial order justifies its own dominance. The doctrine of discovery becomes destiny. The conquerors claim a blank slate, and the conquered are reduced to footnotes. Racism is not just prejudice, it is policy. Every artifact hidden, every story erased, reinforces a narrative where only certain people can be the creators of civilization. This myth seeps into education, law, and the very bones of the nation. Indigenous children are taught to forget. The descendants of Nubian Moors are told they never existed. History becomes a weapon wielded by the powerful. Yet the truth lingers. In family stories, in forbidden texts, in the persistent dreams of those who remember. The silence is not total. It cannot be. The time for secrets is ending. Across America and beyond, people are waking up. Scholars, activists, and descendants of the erased reach deep into the shadows, demanding answers. They piece together the fragments, reconstructing a history more epic and diverse than the world has been allowed to see. The keepers of the old order resist, but the walls are crumbling. Each revelation is a blow against the fortress of lies. The truth, once buried, now begins to breathe. New generations ask questions. They reclaim lost names, languages, and artifacts. The cathedral of white silence trembles. The warning is clear. As long as history sleeps, power remains unchallenged. But when truth awakens, it cannot be stopped. Reclaim the forbidden past, and the future, at last, may belong to all.